For the second time ever, we bring together the amazing forces that are Diesel, Pollock, and Clooney. And why did I say it in that order? Because if you put them together, you get Deepoloony. And really, there's no better name for an episode. Welcome to the Deepoloony episode.
Deepoloonylooza.
The
Yes,
Deepoloonylooza.
I think we just started a conference.
Yeah, this counts as a conference. This counts as a conference.
Yes.
Oh, dear listener slash viewer now, because we also have video available. Welcome to this episode where we have, and I know he hates being referred to as this, but I'm going to do it anyway. The legend that is Michael Pollock.
Yes.
It's like, that's you. You're the legend. And
legendary. Yep.
legendary.
I thought you were going to say Michael frickin' Pollock.
Michael frickin' Pollock.
I know he hates this, but either way, we're excited. We're excited to have
thank you for that. Yeah, no, it's great to be with you guys again.
In fact, we did so much chatting before we started the episode that I really did have to be like, oh wait, we should record this. Michael's just so much fun to talk to. Our pre-conference was a load of fun. So thanks so much for joining us. And we'll dive right in. What's been new with you, Michael? What's been new with you?
What hasn't been new is probably a shorter list. But we are new to Asheville, North Carolina. I am new to black bear photography, which I've been able to do here.
That's a thing.
I do share some of it on Facebook. What else is new in the world of our family is that this was the first year. I've been really sad about this. This was the first year of our lives together that we didn't gather at the Christmas, between like Thanksgiving to New Year's. And we have a 32-year-old, a 30-year-old, and then our youngest is about to turn 21. So life got complicated. And our daughter came home from university, our youngest, with COVID. And then our one working in Baltimore, Maryland, also had COVID. And,
it's all the rage.
Well, yeah, I mean, everyone's doing it. Yeah, I mean,
everyone's doing it. Yeah, everyone's doing it.
We skipped out. Kristen and I got to skip out this time, but so that was really different. There are a lot of good things that have been happening. One was the ITCK, so the International Third Culture Kid Conference that happened in Chiang Mai, Thailand.
Yes.
And, wow.
Did you know that, Chris? Were both of you there and I missed it, or
no, I wasn't able to. I was in Hong Kong at the time, but I made it to the right region-ish. But no, I'm so bummed about it, which is part of the reason I'm so glad we have you, because I'm excited to hear about it. I'm excited to hear about the endeavor, what your thoughts on it were, what the future of it is. Yeah, unpack it all for us, since Jerry and I couldn't be there, and so by proxy, some of our listeners slash viewers weren't able to be there. But yeah, tell us about it.
It was fabulous in the sense of accomplishing a number of difficult things that we set out to do. The kind of the vision for this was, and we're all about TCK care, right? And we realized that it had been a long time, actually maybe never, that there was a conference purposely for a broad range of third culture kids. So this was a conference with a group of Christians doing third culture kid care all over the world. Like our reps are from Nigeria, Korea, Canada, UK, Brazil, Spain. I'm sure I'm missing someone. Korea, did I say Korea? Canada, US. Yeah, I mean, and this is the planning group, right? And we're also in the process of looking to add some more folks. But this group said, we want a conference that welcomes everyone in the third culture community, and that is underpinned, with Christian values, and that in itself can be a little bit tricky, right?
Yeah.
We want to take on the things that are sometimes not talked about, and and live for a few days in the tensions of this needs to be talked about. We need to address it. We need to know how to care for each other better. And so we hit topics like disabilities in the TCK world and how it impacts families. We had Madonna Maurer there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
She's fantastic. Um, we
Brilliant.
addressed the impact of gender and sexuality norm in the third culture and the layer that adds if when a culture or the cultures that you pass between are accepting, not accepting of where
Yeah.
you are in your sense of identity. um you know I mean, just I could go on. I'm actually really excited about I'm excited about it all. It was really amazing. But I was one pass on that's coming from the conference is a seminar that I'll be doing with Karina Lagarigue in April, and then we are going to offer some small specific coaching sessions after that, based on the what we've been learning about the TCK and highly sensitive persons
Mm.
connection.
Mm.
I learned in this last year, that's something that's new, that I am solidly in the HSP camp. That's about 20% of the population. It has a number of different iterations, and but the turns out the research is deep, over 30 years, and and when I met Karina, I then learned. I said, how long have you been, working on this? And she's working on a PhD and doing research. And I thought that she was, probably kind of peripheral to this. Well, she's working alongside, doing research alongside the originator of this concept. And I was like, this is
Oh,
this is fantastic. We really need to.
you're just getting
Uh,
right to the source.
it was a gift. It was really a gift. Um, so I think that's when you think about TCK populations, and when you consider epigenetics, that our experience can flip switches in our DNA,
Mm.
then when you say, well, uh, an HSP person, it's a genetic makeup, okay?
Hmm.
And so what we got talking about, one of the things was, so can the disruptiveness and the changes that and sometimes uh, trauma or complex trauma that a person can go through in a TCK experience, can that have an epigenetic effect and move someone more toward a highly sensitive camp? So that's a research question. It hasn't been answered yet. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
So
That, um,
another thing,
that's,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead.
I was
No,
gonna
go
switch.
ahead. I
Switch
think my end. No, I was gonna switch. Um, no, this is why I've been excited to talk to you, because it feels like, okay, yeah, there's a lot that is new. It has been a couple years, I think, since we talked, but it just feels like um time is moving faster than it has ever moved. Like the world is changing faster than it has ever changed before. And so you, as kind of the legendary source of, like, one of the great minds around the TCK topic, right? Like you understand this, you live this, you know this, you grew up with this, you experienced it. I Yeah, I would put your ins up against anybody in the world. and yet the world has changed so much so quickly. And so it's like there's this foundation that comes, from the work of your father, from Ruth, and then your contribution.
Yeah.
But how does that all play together, right? What's changing as the world changes?
In like a one sentence.
Yeah, nice simple answer if you don't mind. Just go ahead
Yeah,
and wrap
yeah.
that all
Just,
up
I
for
mean, if
us.
you do it in a word, in one word,
Yeah. You know, I keep hearing researchers and
what shifts do you see? What shifts do you see in the and you've already expanded on some of them, right? But what's happening in the TCK world?
yeah. Well, there's this larger picture of I've heard it stated this way by neurologists saying our brains are not made wired for the pace of life that we actually live.
Hmm.
And that makes a lot of sense once when you
It-
and the way we feel,
yeah,
you know.
I feel like it made more sense for me than it should have. But yes, I resonate
Well,
10,000%.
that quote that I like, it's a Persian quote that the soul travels by horseback. That's in the TCK book, and there's a really cool TCK author in England who's in the UK who's written poetry about that. But that idea, always feeling somehow like there's a part of us like two steps behind. Now, that can be partly generational, right? Um, and the changes, and I think that the way brain function, is changing generationally is also really rapid. So understanding yeah, epigenetics, the impact of experience and environment on our genetic expression, those kinds of things, and then the psychology of if the world has had increased mobility, it also has increased crossing of culture. It has increased losses. It has increased um, grief. Maybe that grief, can be unresolved. So those are some of the threads and some of the themes out of the TCK studies from before. And now I think there's an important place to mesh those, with what's going on in neurology, and what's happening in physics, and there's just some incredible. And then you turn to the topic of AI, and I just
Mhm,
read yesterday that the first
mhm.
implant was made into a human brain to
Yeah.
its main
Oh,
function is to increase mobility for folks who have paralysis issues. And that just got
Wow.
me spinning off on I I wrote, you know,
Mhm.
the dystopian, movie writers are, you know, they got to be going
Oh yeah.
right
Yeah.
now,
so
getting
much
that,
fuel. So much fuel.
so much fodder for that. Um, but yeah, so keeping up with the change, that it's impossible. So I feel like it's a matter of picking the areas. And while I'm super interested about, science of the mind and neurology and AI and these things, I keep coming back to how does this impact uh, our relationships, right? I think kind of one of the core parts of being human is
Mhm.
our relationships to each other, and relationship to ourself, relationships to each other, and that is oh, who said that? Yeah, bidden or unbidden, God is present. A relationship to being outside of ourselves. And I think a lot of it is fragmenting. You know,
Mhm.
uh, a lot of those influences are fragmenting to those relationships. Um, and that's a common theme among the third culture, and the question of how to resolve
Yeah.
that reputation,
Yep.
and to put self and community together in some way, in some place.
Yeah.
I'm smiling a ton because I'm with you guys. I've been doing, I kind of live and work in this, my wife and I in this 600 square foot space, and I'm working from home, and because I'm new in the community too, I'm just starting to get to know folks, and th that feels fragmenting. I just feel kind of
Yeah.
disconnected. While sometimes that's freeing in the sense of responsibilities and expectations. If people don't know you, they really can't expect a lot of you, uh, except just to, maybe be a decent human being. Um, and but that sense of hmm, connection, the purpose together,
Mhm.
sharing of community, sharing life, it's it, right? As we put it. So yeah. So I think it's getting more, in some ways, it can be more complicated to for people in
Yeah.
the third
Yeah.
culture, um, kids and adults, all across that to, well, I'm calling it to remember. I gave a talk um, to a group of folks, and what had occurred to me as I was preparing was the word remember is amazing. I have always thought about it as a like recall, okay? But if you break down the word, it's to remember, it's to member again.
Mhm.
Get it right? And I
I
thought
get it.
for the first time, I thought the opposite is not forget.
Mm.
The opposite is dismember.
Wow.
Uh,
Ooh.
yeah. And when that struck me, I thought, oh, wow, that is often how people feel. And
Mhm.
when you talk about a TCK, say, who grew up in Asia, who is now living in Canada, who not living near Toronto, or other, or the West Coast with high Asian populations, can feel like a part of them is dismembered. That how
Mhm.
I'm coaching a handful of folks. And I'll just put in a quick word. I do have spaces left for currently for coaching for the coming year. But you don't have to sign up for a year. Let's just say that it's not a lifetime commitment. Um,
Once you're in, you're in.
once you
There's
can
no
check
way.
out, but you can never leave. Uh, but this common theme of how do I bring the parts of me together in a way that makes sense in a community of people? That's like 60%, of the
Mhm.
coaching.
Mhm.
And I think that third culture kids are not the only folks in society who are feeling that way.
Yeah.
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 I'm glad you said that. I think my mind was spinning as you said all of that,
Mm.
because I think, even from the get-go, the one of the things that I get to talk a lot about with parents, when I'm speaking in schools, is the idea that, to assuage some guilt, for lack of a better term, because a common thought is, oh, I feel bad because we thrust our kids into this TCK lifestyle. What have I done to them? And
Yeah.
um, and from my perspective, as a third culture kid, um, one of the things I've realized is that nobody gets to choose their upbringing. Nobody, and I have
Right.
friends who, were born and raised in a small town, and they look at a transient life and think, oh, if only I could have had that. And you do get TCKs who think, man, I'd have done so much better if I could just have been in one place. But
Right.
nobody gets to pick. And I guess I say all that because it's fascinating to me. I think we underestimate sometimes, going back to, one of the things you said about, epigenetics and things like that. We sometimes underestimate that balance between, nature and nurture, and how intertwined they are. That our
Yeah.
surroundings are nurturing, has an effect on nature, has an effect on our genetics, and vice versa. Obviously, our genetics lead us in certain ways, but knowing that relationship is a lot more dynamic, um, kind of connecting that with some of the other things you said, I I wonder if we're going to see, as we are moving into more and more rapid change, um, maybe maybe some people are going to thrive more in that. Maybe some people are really excited and are like,
Mhm.
yes, I want more cultural input and more transience and more change. That's what I've been waiting for. Um, and 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 whereas other people, yeah, other people are going to be more stressed and think, oh no, 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 no. Like
Right.
I was not built for this. And I think about, people. I have a friend who I visited recently, and he does say all the time, he's like, I was born in the wrong century. He's like, I should have been about a century ago, and royalty. Like I should have been a century ago. I also should have been royal. And I'm like, that makes a difference. Um, but I do. I wonder if we're going to see more people feeling displaced. This change happens so
Right.
much more quickly. And if we do see more people displaced, it makes what you're saying all the more important. That how do we remember? How do we pull people together when more and more people feel displaced? And yeah, thinking in those directions. I'm so glad that the ITCK conference happened, um, because I think we need to pull more minds and more thoughts together, because yeah, change is happening more rapidly. Some people are going to struggle with it. Some people are going to excel, and it means so much. We say it all the time, but so many things we know about TCKs are going to have relevance far beyond just TCKs. And so
Right.
yeah, so with all of that, there's so much to do moving forward.
Mhm.
Right, right. It's not just a niche study. I think that's why Ruth Van Rieken so often used the image of a petri dish.
Mhm.
Say, if we can understand this, then we can, extrapolate that out to
Yeah. Yeah.
serve and care for lots of people. And I mean, Ted Ward, the researcher, that was his TCKs are the prototype citizens of the future, not because they were going to be some special, beings, but because our future is moving, that way. And when you think about climate change, when you think about that we haven't found the secret to world peace yet. So inter-country and within country, conflicts, so
Yeah.
many different things are displacing people. And the whole to think about what are going to be the needs, going forward of climate refugees, and
Mhm.
displaced weather is that climate displaced people. um
Yeah.
Although what we
Yeah.
know about how to care for, what we know about how to address, all those needs is going to, be valuable. So we want to, first of all, I think the goal is to share resources, share knowledge, share our questions, um, in a two-way conversation or multi-way conversations and understandings, um, and kind of pipelines, for those resources. But globally, it's been a long time since there has been sort of that connected focus, in the third culture world. And so how we define it is important. So it's something that, I've been doing a lot of thinking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not defining so that we can put, edges on it. I think I've said that before on the other podcast, that the the group that wants defined edges probably the most is are researchers, because they want to make sense of a set, and I get that, makes sense.
Yeah.
But practitioners, we don't really care so much. We say, oh, have you had this experience? Is it impacting you in this way? Well, then come on aboard, or do you have a sense of your identity and your culture and belonging, that you have a hard time feeling like you fit in anywhere? You fit in with us, come on.
Hmm.
Right. So
Mhm.
I think we've struggled over that for so long. And I sociologist Danao Tanu, um,
Mhm.
was also presenting at the conference. And one of the things that she talked about is how she said, well, anthropologists, sociologists tend to take the most interest in the borderlands, and who are the gatekeepers, and how do people move in and out of these different cultural groups. And I thought, wow, the gatekeepers, that matters so much. When I think of my dad, one of the things that I love and still like brings a lump up is um, just how inclusive he was. Any human being that he met, I think, felt loved and seen and heard,
Mm.
and felt important because that's how he saw people. So, even when you talk about, legends and experts, I'm very cautious with those words, but I think if there are going to be, gatekeepers in a sense in this realm of third culture care, um, it ought to be the people who love people the most. If
Hmm.
Yeah,
that,
well
I,
said.
I don't know.
It's a
I
good
had,
qualification, I feel. It's a good qualification.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to go back. One of the things that was also unique about this conference was the age spans. We
Hmm.
had a young woman who was 17 or 18,
Wow.
who brought a musical gift to the,
Wow.
my goodness, I think we were all just blown away and we're like, how do we get your LP? Um, and that was amazing. Um, and then, the upper end, everyone wants to laugh and not talk about it. Um, but folks in their 70s, for sure. Um, and those weren't, those are not barriers in that third culture. Uh, Folks from, yeah, all across the world. I think when I listed, I didn't say India, and that's hugely important and is even leading to some new thoughts, new projects. Yeah, there,
Wow.
yeah, that's a whole, wow, we could have a whole conversation on what's going on in India, but yeah,
That's it's exciting. It's exciting to see the expansion of um I think there's just the growth in the petri dish, right? To see what's coming out of the petri dish and I haven't talked to Ruth for a while, but I can imagine she just has those beautiful eyes of desiring that, wanting to see that, and empowering that, right? Like empowering other people to do that. And you mentioned, if we're gonna have gatekeepers, they ought to be the people who love, and you would hope that those are the ones that float to the top, right? Like, and those are the ones who have the impact, and yet society, the world doesn't always have that same filter. We don't choose our leaders based on love. That is not any type of political statement. I deny any type of, but whoever you thought of in your head, you're right. Um, yeah,
Desmond Tutu is
but
an exception.
what's right? Um, what what is how I'm trying to frame the right question ahead here. What do we do to encourage, support, that like push towards that type of gatekeeper, right? Like how do we encourage that to actually be the case? The loving gatekeeper.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think um, who we promote and what we promote, um, even matters. What you just said about we we human population don't tend to pick our leaders that way, and a reasonable reply might be, why not? Right? I
It's a
mean,
great reply. Yeah.
there there are there are particular competencies to different leadership roles. Um, but I think this is a C.S. Lewis quote. Great intelligence and ability that without love that leans toward evil or selfishness, um, is just more capable of doing more harm, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's really interesting. And we've been talking quite a bit about and talking with younger folks. I think mentoring is a huge part of that. When we see
Mm-hmm.
there were over 200 people present, and then maybe 70 something online, and just an exceptional gathering of beautiful people. And I kept thinking about that, about how do we stay in touch? How do we um, encourage, the folks in Brazil and Nigeria and Kenya
Mm-hmm.
and India and Canada, and all the exotic places. That's a joke. Exotic, that's a joke. Um, and so yeah, I think mentoring is a big deal in that. And there has to be there have to be places to cross to get to know each other and things. I think conferences like that can be one of those places, but work groups and networks, and we have the technology to create those. Are we using it that way is a good question. I am a big proponent. I may have said this on the last podcast too, just put me on repeat, but I'm a big proponent of co-mentoring. And that concept is related to what we talked about earlier with the speed of change. I love the relationship I have with my almost 21-year-old who's studying neuroscience. And there are lots of things that I, need to, I go to her for, what do you think about and what's your perspective on? And or also, even, you know, do you know how to do this? Have you heard of this app? Kind of thing. And
Right.
and she's quite patient with me. Um, there are so many younger generations who I believe are kind of crying out or asking, looking for people
Mm-hmm.
that they can trust, people that they can look to come alongside and share some of that life wisdom, the experience wisdom, and and you know, I think a big part of mentoring is part of it is just affirming, right, who people are, the experience that they've had, the knowledge that they have, and that sometimes it's a matter of just saying, and you're great, you're going to be okay, you can do this.
Yeah.
Now, now AI, you're going to have a lot to have to work with, and the and ecology and global warming. I mean, that's not a laughing matter. That those there are big things to deal with. Um, but I have a lot of faith. I take heart
Mm-hmm.
when I meet younger gen and folks and hang out, spend time.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you do so well, and part of the reason we were so excited to have you, is you're so good at bringing language to things. And to me, that's it's such an important step because you're right. We are dealing with a lot. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of challenges. But the reality is, yeah, I think we can look at things from a hopeful perspective. And I think the more we provide people sort of the language, because language helps us connect. And the more we provide the language and build those connections, the more we benefit from the fact that there's so much
Mm-hmm.
people can contribute, and even just, use the language of I remember you posting on LinkedIn about what you found out about, highly sensitive personalities and things like that. And even that, being able to have the language to say, oh, this explains the why, which is one of the big things about even the importance of the language of third culture kids. That's, I think each of us have gotten to experience the just that look of amazement in someone's face when they learn what a TCK is and go, oh, okay. That 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 sense of belonging that comes when you have language. And and so with that, do you is there going to be another ITCK conference are there plans for it to become annual? I know we didn't even rehearse whether I'm allowed to ask these things. I'm just asking them.
Whether you're allowed.
I know.
Well, as two influencers in the third culture realm, I hope you'll get behind that. And I mean, there are so many good things, happening, official and unofficial, and one of the realities, we actually just met with a group that's called the Shepherds Council. That's the global group. And out of that group, right, came the folks who were leading the conference, and then we got to pull in some other amazing people as well. So we were just talking about that yesterday morning, I think.
Hot off the press, hot off the press.
And there is this pretty rich discussion about both the need to broadly connect, and also to provide things that can hone in. So if you don't have any places to specifically discuss the unique aspects of what's going on as a TCK in the military, or a TCK in missions, or a TCK in business, there's a bit of a loss there. Now, the things in common are super important, and so what comes next? So one suggestion has been that perhaps the global BESIS conferences every 3 years or so. There was also discussion about, well, if you have it in a setting like in South America, and it's very difficult for folks from Asia to afford this. Like we don't want to block people out of a conference like this because of funds, right? So there was even discussion about, well, do we have it a little more frequently in these different parts of the world, so it's about 3 years apart and different. So it's under construction, but good conversations. And then the question of how to focus in between, in your particular strata of third culture, in your region, and so really building the smaller networks as well. I think and hope very much that that it's not more than 3 years, that the the ITCKC will happen again. And I'm very encouraged too by the folks who came again from all over the globe, who just have amazing gifts. So I think the addition of good minds and younger, fresh energy, and things, will help that along. We financially, the committee raised, and I was on the leadership committee for the conference. I was on a subcommittee for program. The leadership raised about $60,000 to make sure that folks from regions with fewer resource would be able to to be both presenting and attending. And so there was another piece that was unique amongst many conferences. So I think there's something very,
it's exciting,
very, very unique, very special about this. Yeah. So
oh my gosh, it's so good to hear.
Yeah. So the answer is yes, right? Yes, more to come.
Yes.
More to come. Oh my gosh, which it is, and that's a hopeful place, to kind of end on here, just because there's so much. It's all changing and all happening so rapidly, and I think it's easy to get lost in that. That's one of the things, that caught my attention that you talked about near the beginning, is just what our brains aren't designed for that, which is such an interesting thought, that our brains aren't designed for the level of change that we're experiencing. And it begs the follow-on question: are we going to adapt to that? Which our brains do apparently adapt. I remember, and it's purely anecdotal, I don't remember where I read it, so maybe I made it up, but I do remember, you have access to a neurologist or neuroscience, so you can check on this with your daughter. But I remember an interesting study that said that they could see a difference in brain pathways and brain mapping for London cab drivers. That the way they had to think, London is just such an odd network to learn to drive in, and that they could see a difference in their neural pathways. That cab drivers in London had a different set of neural pathways. So adaptation, we do seem possible, and it's exciting to think that through events like ITCK, through the networks that have come out of it, it's exciting to think that maybe we could all have a part in helping us adapt to all these things coming up. Which, and I have to, this is the point of the episode where I have to point out that, speaking of adapting and changing, I would like to throw a little mention to our friends over at KC360.co, who help with the massive adaptation that is TCKs going to college. And the dear people over there can help with things like the FAFSA, which is just a fun word to say, but not a fun
I
set of
can't even
paperwork to
say
fill
it.
out.
Yeah.
Nope, FAFSA. They can help with FAFSA. They can help plan your journey. They can help even with the essay writing. So if you happen to be a TCK going off to college soon, or you're a parent of TCKs going off to college soon, if you would like help adapting with that, head on over to kc360.co because they're very clever people over there. So there we go. Had to put that in. But our dear Michael Pollock, so many things you opened up. Do you have any parting words of wisdom? Any parting thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners / viewers with?
I want to go back to what you said about language, how important language is. And this is where not fighting over, the boundaries for, who is in and who's out of of the third culture experience. But do you have time for me to share like the very quickly the three legs of the stool? And maybe we'll pick that up again.
No, of course we do. Of course we do.
Okay. Well, so as I've been, and this is conversation maybe a year long every week or so because it was planned every week, but life happens with Ruth Van Rieken, researchers like Danao, um, people who are doing other research like Karina, and so the way I've spun it down there, I had some aha moments, and I think that the third culture kid experience, that's the important part, right? It's not a label like you are this thing, but you have had this experience, has, I think, three key parts that have been identified, but maybe there's one that's been implied but not stated. Okay, so the first thing that we recognize is that the reason that has the term kids is because it's during the developmental years. So these experiences happen while people are growing up. Now, lots of discussion about why did we decide 18 is the end of growing up when the brain continues to develop until 26-ish?
Yeah.
So, and I still feel like mine has, like a couple more things
and beyond. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm just in the new neural pathways, time now. I think, yeah. But 26. So so is that is that how important is that to consider language? Some research that we know needs to be done is in taking in culture, what are there particular developmental stages where you're acculturated, much more strongly than others? And so that's someone's going to have to kind of blend like Piaget's, stages or whatever, with developmental stages with cross culture, and that could be a really fun PhD, somebody out there.
I'm on it.
So that's important. Yeah, yeah.
Jerry's got it. Jerry's got it.
Let me know how that's going.
I'm going to sign up online right now.
Second leg of the stool is that cross-cultural experience. And one of the things that Ruth, you seem talked clearly about was that these are spaces in which culture is being exchanged, ways of life are being exchanged. And I think that there are real implications in thoughts about cultural hegemony, or when there's crossing of culture, but one culture is you know crushing the other, might even be a genocide. So there's some real important sociological things to think about, creating a quality of difference. So, for instance, she wasn't talking about a traditional colonialism. Okay. Ruth Yusin was talking in her point, this relationship in India of the expat community with the local Indian community, and how all of those people were creating a way of life that was built around sharing these cultures. So, so an equality of cultural exchange is, it seems like that's an important
Mm.
so that's that's leg two. Okay. So we've got, during the developmental years, we've got the cross-cultural piece that really comes out of an exchange of cultures. And then this part where the explanation and definition that my dad gave was talking about, going with their parents outside of, outside of their culture. And I began to spin that down and do research and talk to people about what we're getting at. Is it the word mobility? A lot of folks have begun to use, oh, it's, real simple. When you're a kid and you cross cultures and you're mobile, okay, boom. All right, that's pretty easy. But mobility in and of itself is a cause, right? It's not the effect of that cause. And it doesn't explain what happens in a community like an international school, where someone who comes from the community nearby and is a part of that school becomes a third culture kid. How
Mm.
is that? They don't have that, mobility piece, right? So, as I thought about it, the thing that struck me was it's about change, and but it's not just change, because every human being, we just talked about how much change we're going through. So how do you
Yeah.
define? So this is, during the developmental years, it's the idea of disruptive change.
Mhm.
Mm.
And then I borrowed a word that was so clever that my dad used, significant. Well, what is significant disruptive change for a human being? Well, it depends on the human being, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
It's sort of how, when you go to like trauma, you can't say, well, this event is traumatic. No, you have to go to the person's experience and how they were able or not able to handle it and assimilate it,
Process that.
deal
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
Boom. So this idea, the third leg, is significant disruptive change, and that's geographic and or socio-relational, right?
Mm.
Your people, your anchors in life
Mhm. Mhm.
change, whether you move or not. Even a kid that is from Nigeria, who goes to an international school in England, that and stays there, long term, say, well, that person wasn't very mobile. Yeah, but if it's really an international school, right, the other people kept
Yeah.
change, that social grouping, that the connections to people, and those connections to people, as maybe this is a great way to wrap, because we kind of began there, you know, the love and the care, the interest, the being known, being seen, and being loved and cared for who you are. This is an essence. This is an essential part of being a human being.
Mm.
So when those are disrupted, and dismembered, right,
Yeah.
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 it's going to have an impact. And it doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily have a negative impact. I mean, it's going to be a challenge, right? But it's about walking with people through those disruptive changes in a supportive way, giving them what they need for that, understanding what the experience is about,
Yeah.
that that you know create positive outcomes.
There
Oh,
it is.
that's
Good
such a
stuff.
good wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a good wrap up because it speaks to the human relational experience. And I appreciate that we get to end on um I think what was a great example of, I mean, Ruth Van Rieken talks about expanding the tent, and I love that
Yeah.
idea. And I've spoken at schools where yeah, there a lot of international schools have a more significant local population now. And there's definitely been discussion about, what happens if you are a Malaysian student attending an international school in Malaysia? Are you a TCK? And I've always argued that yes, because, they're having culturally a very different experience than, say, their neighbor, who their kids go to a Malaysian school. So they're still getting multiple cultural influences, and they're still getting a degree of transience. And I think, your definition of it, so much better, that idea of, significant disruptive change. And that expands the language, and it's that language that helps us connect.
Mm.
Michael Pollock, I know
Michael?
you don't want to hear it, but legend, such a legend. And it's been so good having you. We'll have to do this again, because I think we just cracked open a whole bunch of stuff. So we'll have to do we'll have to, oh wait, what I call it, a Deepoloony. We'll have to have Deepoloonylooza
I
part
love it.
3.
Yeah.
I love the time with you.
It's dangerously close to
Deepoloonylooza part 3.
depolluting, which I guess is still a
Yeah,
good thing, right?
yeah.
Like
Well,
Both positive. Deep
yeah,
polluting sounds
that's
positive.
yeah,
still. I'll take it.
unpacking the world and cleaning it. There we go.
And cleaning the world. Deepoloony cleaning. Deep Deepoloony cleaning. Look, there we have it. There we have it.
It just gets better.
It does.
Yeah.
A whole conference is starting here. Whole conference.
And is it okay to
Global
say
Deepolooning Conference. We may
Deepolooning
pick up some big names who are just mistaken. They think they're coming to something else.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
This could be really
we'll
good.
take them?
Yeah.
Is it okay to say that that my this work, I'm available? I'm actually doing online training for a school in India this coming week. I'm going to be going to Korea to work with TCKs there in the summer. I love to be able to do this. So, if there's a place where there are questions, need for coaching or mentoring or collaboration, training, contact me. I love it.
Yeah. And we'll
How
put
do
it in
they
the
do
show
that? How do we
notes.
contact you?
Yeah, we'll put it in the notes, but tell us how's the best way to get in touch.
There is actually a website at darajatck.org. I am in the process of recruiting someone who knows more about maintaining, and keeping a good, vibrant web page going. And I have some nibbles on that. That's a good way. I'm on Facebook. I'm my work email. Is that a good thing to give here?
Sure. Our listeners/viewers are trustworthy.
It's all over. It's all over anyway. It's so it's my initials. This my parents did to me. MVP.
Love
period. AT period WORK at gmail.com. So it looks like MVP at work at gmail.com.
So good.
I'm on LinkedIn as well. Yeah. And what's up?
Yes. I know it's true. I think Michael and I chatted on 6 different platforms to get this set up. There were LinkedIn messages, there were Facebook messages, there were emails, there were
MySpace.
All of it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you so much for doing this. This is a little spur of the moment, and I loved it. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Always great.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
We really should do it in person.
At the conference. At the conference.
Absolutely.
At the Deepoloony Conference. Details will be coming out.
But anytime you're near Asheville, please let me know. Peace.
Oh,
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, and dear listener/viewer. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you'll come again soon for, Deepoloony Part 3. We'll depollute misconceptions aplenty.
Well said.